Hello, my name's Eugene Sadler-Smith and I'm Professor of Organisational Behaviour at the University of Surrey, and I'm here to talk to you today about intuitive intelligence and how it can add value to organisations in the age of artificial intelligence. So let's get started. The overall framework in which I want to put intuitive intelligence is the idea that intelligence is hybrid. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there's more than one type of intelligence. So for example, there's human analytical intelligence, which is the kind of intelligence that gets tested in IQ tests. Alongside that, there's human intuitive intelligence, which I'll say much more about shortly. And then, of course, alongside the human analytical and the human intuitive intelligence is artificial intelligence. So in today's world, we need all three intelligences. That's why intelligence is hybrid. So this is this hybrid intelligence model of human analytical, human intuitive, and machine artificial intelligences. The thing I want to focus on in relation to this hybrid intelligence model is the idea of how do these three types of intelligence get developed. So developing the three intelligences, well, machine artificial intelligence is developed by programming and by machine learning. Human analytical intelligence is developed by education and by training, and the education and training system does a good job in developing human analytical intelligence. It has done for a long time. However, the education and training system doesn't do quite such a good job in developing intuitive intelligence, and that's the thing that I would like to focus on today, the question of if and how intuitive intelligence can be developed. Of course, the first step in exploring how intuitive intelligence can be developed is to define intuitive intelligence, which I'd like to do on the next slide. So we can take a leaf out of the book of Daniel Goleman, who wrote the bestseller Emotional Intelligence back in the 1990s. And Daniel Goleman defined emotional intelligence as the ability to understand and manage your emotions, as well as recognize and influence the emotions of those around you. So taking that as an analog, I would like to suggest, therefore, that intuitive intelligence is the ability to notice, understand, and manage your intuitions and use this knowledge to take better decisions. So there we have the definition, and there we have alongside the definition a picture of a radar screen. And the question is why? What's that got to do with intuitive intelligence? What has that got to do with the ability to notice, understand, and manage your intuitions and use this knowledge to take better decisions? Well, I like to think of intuition as a sensing system, and it sits alongside analysis, which is a solving system. So this simple split between the two human intelligences of analytical intelligence and intuitive intelligence is paralleled with the idea that intuition senses, whereas analysis solves. So we can think of intuition as a radar, as a GPS, as an early warning system. Those are three metaphors for intuition. It's this ability to sense, to know without knowing how or why you know, but simply having that sense about a particular situation, which can cause you to approach a situation or a person, or it can cause you to avoid a situation or a person. So this idea of approach and avoid is important as well, associated with gut feelings about things and people. So most of the rest of this talk will be about how to develop intuitive intelligence, because I think it's a skill that can be developed. It's developable. It's not a gift as such. It's not magical. It's not mystical. It's not a sixth sense. It's a developable skill that anybody can be developed under the right guidance. And what I would like to share with you is some of the methods I've used with undergraduates, postgraduate students, master's students, and managers and execs to develop their intuitive intelligence. And I base it on the idea of a workout, which again is a metaphor, because we go to the gym to develop our physical muscle power. So equally, we can perform workouts that develop our intuitive muscle power. And I'm going to share with you 5 workouts that I've used with undergrads, postgrads and execs to develop their intuitive muscle power as part of a process of developing intuitive intelligence. So the 5 workouts are as follows. Workout 1, getting to grips with your gut feelings. Workout 2, I've called In 2 Minds. Workout 3 is called Go With Your Gut, ? Workout 4 is debias your decisions, because as we know, intuition sometimes gets it right, but it can also get it wrong. And number 5 is called adding value with intuition in the age of artificial intelligence. So let's work our way through the 5 workouts for developing intuitive intelligence. It's worth saying that these are the kind of things that I've used with classes, and I've found that they've worked quite well, and students, delegates respond well to them. So they're the kind of things that I think any educator or trainer could use, adapt to develop intuition with your own students and your own trainees. So let's get to grips with gut feelings in workout 1. Workout 1 is based around an activity that I call What Happens When You Intuit. And what I do here is I take the noun intuition and turn it into a verb, intuit. So I denominalize it to give it the technical term. Intuition becomes intuit, and I ask people to reflect on an occasion on which they've used their intuition and to tell me what happens when they intuit. And they do that by completing the following statement. When I intuit, I ... So for example, a typical response to that might be, when I intuit, I get a feeling that things don't stack up. So that's metaphorical, but it's someone trying to express their inner subjective state in order to communicate it to me. And then doing this with a group of people can get very interesting, because you can consolidate the individual responses from people in the group, collect them together on a flip chart, get them to text them to you, however you want, or email them to you, or however it works for you. It can consolidate the individual responses into a group description of intuition, and then compare that with definitions from the literature. In other words, to take the individual subjective personal experience and compare it with what the books say. So there's a typical one. When I intuit, I get the feeling that something doesn't stack up. Collating those together from a group of people can be really insightful and can come up with a kind of a composite description of what intuition is, what the group thinks intuition is. Sometimes I take that information and create a word cloud out of it. So here's a word cloud from responses to what happens when you intuit from 127 HR managers. And as you know, with a word cloud, the size of the letters indicates the frequency with which the words were used. So for example, the most commonly used words in the responses that I got back from the group were decision, something, feeling, and right. And a good exercise to do is to get the group to create a definition from the word cloud. So for example, in this case, intuition is when I take a decision on the basis of something feeling right. So intuition is when I take a decision on the basis of something feeling right. So it's kind of, you can play around with it, but you can get the group to produce a composite definition. And that then, I think that's important, because it's starting from their subjective experiences. And then we can then, move from their experiences to the literature, to the research. So with each workout, what I do, the pattern is I get the group to do something. For example, the exercise that you've just seen, and then connect that to theory. I don't start with theory, I start with the activity. So for example, then connecting with the research. Okay, so we say to the group, well, that's how you've defined or described intuition. What do the textbooks say? Well, here's one from 1986 from Weston Agor, who was one of the pioneers of intuition, who described intuition as a subspecies of logical thinking, which steps of the process are hidden in the subconscious portion of the brain. Herbert Simon, 1987, classic definition of intuition. Intuitions are analyses frozen into habit and the capacity for rapid response through recognition. Those are two old definitions from the mid-1980s. More up to date, here's Miller and Ireland's definition from 2005, a judgment or a choice made through a subconscious process involving a synthesis, a putting together of diverse experiences, novel combinations of information and strong feelings of being right. And then another classic definition from Eric Dane and Mike Pratt in 2007. Intuitions are effectively charged judgments that arise through rapid, non-conscious and holistic associations. I group those together as modern definitions. So the yellow definitions are almost like the Old Testament of intuition research, and the blue boxes are the more like the New Testament of intuition definitions. And it's interesting for the group to compare their description with what the textbooks say. So that's really the first workout, is to get people to recognize what intuition is, recognize their own experiences, and compare it with what the research says. And I find it to be a very insightful experience, and it's quite a fun thing to do as well, because people like to respond to it. Like to respond to the question, what happens when you intuit, and they like to discuss it with their colleagues and friends to come up with a shared description. So each workout, then, remember there are 5 workouts. For each workout I give a takeaway. So the takeaway for the group from workout 1 is that intuition is a quick, automatic judgment based on unconscious processing of information. It's a product of learning and experience, and it's experienced as a gut feeling, and a positive gut feeling signals approach, and a negative gut feeling signals avoid. That's workout 1. If you want to read more about workout 1, to get to more of the research behind it, then my paper in Human Relations in 2016 might be a place to start. That's where I report the research that used the what happens when you intuit question. And then way back 20 years ago now, Sadler-Smith and Sheffey, an Academy of Management Perspectives, kind of a piece for executives and managers around understanding and applying gut feeling decision making in the business context. So that 2004 paper is more background. The 2016 paper is more empirical around the idea of what happens when you intuit. So that's workout 1. Workouts, remember, 5 workouts to develop intuitive intelligence. Workout 2, called Into Mind. So this really drills down into the theory of intuition. We've defined it in workout 1. Workout 2 goes into the theory of intuition. And Into Mind, I sometimes call this, what's your NQ? Well, what on earth is NQ? Well, we know what IQ is. That's analytical intelligence. We know what EQ is. That's emotional intelligence, so no prizes for guessing. NQ, I've called NQ intuitive intelligence. So how can people work out what their NQ is? I've developed an inventory, a questionnaire. Again, it's in Sadler-Smith 2024, the little book that you see up in the top corner there. Here are some sample questions from the little questionnaire that's in that book. I'm good at picking up on things about people or situations that others overlook. That's an intuition question. There are 20 questions in all, 10 questions for intuition and 10 questions for analysis. So an analysis question is, I like to solve problems using structured techniques such as listing pros and cons, tables, flowcharts, etc. And of course, what people do is they score it on a 5-point Likert scale, and they come up with a score for their NQ. And the way that I've scored it is a score of -1. -1 is the maximum analytical score, and +1 is the maximum intuitive score. So it goes on a scale from -1 to +1. 0 is in the middle. It's neither analytical nor intuitive. -1, you're highly analytical. +1, you're highly intuitive. What does it mean to be highly? I plot that on what I call an NQ-ometer, where NQ is the intuition quotient, and here's the NQ-ometer, like a little dial, which people like to use. So if you've got a score of 0.5, you're over there, you're quite strongly intuitive. If you have a score of -0.5, you'd be quite strongly analytical. If you have a score of 0, then you're neither analytical nor intuitive, etc., etc. So there's the NQ-ometer. And the interpretation is that the higher you are in intuition, people who are higher on intuition tend to use their overall impression and gut feelings to come to a quick decision. They may not always be able to explain their reasons why, but they're in touch with their gut feelings and treat their gut feelings as a valid form of data. So that's the feedback that I would give to somebody who's high intuitive. Of course, there's an equivalent piece of feedback for someone who's high analytical. So it's ranged on this scale from -1 to +1. The NQ-ometer, again, that's from the Intuition Analysis Inventory that's in the new book, Trust Your Gut. So it's really a way of people getting in touch with their cognitive style, if you like, their thinking preferences. Do they prefer intuition? Do they prefer analysis? Or are they somewhere in between? Needless to say, Other inventories and questionnaires are available, things that I've used in the past in my own research, excellent inventories. For example, a thing called the Cognitive Styles Index, the CSI, developed by Chris Allinson and John Hayes. Another one that I've used in my research, the Rational Experiential Inventory, the REI, developed by Seymour, Epstein and colleagues. And then the third one there, the Linear Non-Linear Thinking Styles Profile, developed by Charlie Vance and his colleagues. Linear thinking is analytical thinking, and non-linear thinking is intuitive thinking. And if you Google those, Google Scholar, for example, you'll find numerous papers that use the CSI, the REI, and the LNTSP as a way of measuring cognitive style, in the same way that the little inventory in my new book does. What does it all mean? How does that connect with the research? Well, looking at someone's cognitive style or thinking style is a good way to get them into the idea of dual process theory, or two minds in one brain. So, for example, the analytical mind, if we take the left-hand side to begin with, the analytical mind is a narrow bandwidth processor. It involves controlled processing. It works by step-by-step analysis. Its workings are conscious. We're aware of them. We're aware of them because it talks, in inverted commas, it talks to us in the language of words. The analytical mind is a recent development in human evolution, and so something like the past 60,000 years, and also it's uniquely human. So evolutionary psychologists argue that it's something that animals don't have, but the human animal does have. And another name for it, or label for it, is System 2. And as I said a few slides back, I call it a solving system as well. So System 2, the analytical mind, is a solving system. And then this theory works really nicely because the intuitive mind corresponds in terms of bandwidth processing. So the intuitive mind is a broad bandwidth processor. The intuitive mind is an automatic processor. The intuitive mind works by whole pattern recognition. The intuitive mind's workings are unconscious. It can't talk to us in the language of words, so it needs to talk to us in the language of feelings. The intuitive mind is ancient in evolutionary terms. It goes way back in human evolutionary history to our ancestors, and it's sometimes called System 1. And I think of it as a sensing system. So the intuitive mind, System 1, is the sensing system. The analytical mind, System 2, is the solving system. So that's the theory, if you like, that I use to frame how I talk about intuitive intelligence. And of course, going back to something I said earlier, the education and the training system is good at developing the analytical mind. What it's less good at is developing the intuitive mind. What I want to try to do is to share with you some techniques that I've used reasonably successfully to develop the intuitive mind, or intuitive intelligence. Okay. Another way to reinforce this idea of dual system or dual process it and connect it with the research is to look at it in terms of how it relates to different aspects of work, life or occupation. So this is a study that I did some years ago with my colleague Jared Hodgkinson, where we looked at intuition and analysis scores by job level. So don't worry about what the vertical axis units are, it doesn't matter. But basically we got managers to fill out the Cognitive Styles Index, which I spoke about earlier, and we compared their intuition scores with their analysis scores by job level, so senior, middle and junior managers. So here are the scores for intuition. So senior managers are more intuitive than middle managers, and middle managers are more intuitive than junior managers. So a nice straight line effect there. And then if we compare that with their scores for analysis, then senior managers are less analytical than middle managers, and middle managers are less analytical than junior managers. Junior managers are the most analytical. So there's a nice pattern there as well, a nice line and a nice crossover really. So intuition goes down with job level, analysis goes up, intuition goes up with job level, and analysis goes down with job level. The other thing to notice about this, of course, is the differences between the coloured bars. So if you take the purple bar for senior managers, the gap is much less pronounced than it is between the pink bar for junior managers. In other words, senior managers have probably got a much more balanced cognitive style, whereas junior managers are much more reliant on analysis and much less reliant on intuition. If we had more time, we could delve into the reasons why. It's probably to do with experience or control or power or something like that. But you know, we can think about that. And it's a good way to get discussion going in class. Students like this, these data, because it helps them to make sense of their intuition, you know, in their own situation, especially if they're working. Intuition and job type. So again, another study that measured analysis and intuition, this time Groves et al. And it compared 3 occupational groups: accountants, actors and entrepreneurs. So here we go then. So analysis scores: accountants are high on analysis, actors are low on analysis, and entrepreneurs are somewhere in the middle. And then you might like to speculate what the pattern might be like for intuition, who's likely to be the most intuitive and who's likely to be the least intuitive. Well, the good news is that accountants are the least intuitive, and that's good. We wouldn't want to employ an intuitive accountant, would we? Because that might get us into into a bit of a mess. Actors are the most intuitive, and entrepreneurs are somewhere in the middle, and that kind of fits with our the image that we have of those different job types. And again, the entrepreneurs are a bit like the senior managers on the previous slide. The gap between their intuition and analysis scores is not huge, whereas the gap between the intuition and analysis scores for accountants is quite marked. So entrepreneurs, it appears, are quite balanced in their cognitive style. They're not way out intuitives who just go with their gut. They balance intuition with analysis. These were successful entrepreneurs in the data in the sample for this study. So that's intuition and job type. Intuition and job person fit. So cognitive style, thinking style, and job person fit. So job satisfaction on the vertical axis, and then comparing analytics with intuitives in an unstructured job. So in an unstructured job, intuitives are more satisfied than analytics. And you can guess what the pattern is. It's the reverse. In a structured job, analytics are more satisfied than intuitives. So it seems to suggest that intuitives prefer jobs where there are relatively few guidelines and rules, where they can exercise their judgment and their creativity. For analytics, the reverse is the case. They like to have rules, procedures, frameworks in which they can exercise their analysis. So that's intuition and person job fit. Brigham et al. 2007. And what have we got left? Okay, fourth one, intuition and gender, the one that people always are fascinated by. So what about the stereotype of female intuition? Are females more intuitive than males? What does the data tell us? Well, let's take a look then. So males, analysis for males, intuition for males there, not a huge gap. And similarly for females, not a huge gap there. In fact, the differences are small, the effect sizes are very small, and these data essentially tell us that in terms of cognitive style, the stereotype of female intuition doesn't really hold much water. There's hardly any difference between males and females in self-reported cognitive style. So, but more work needs to be done, I think, on this idea of intuition and gender. You know, is it nature, is it nurture, is it the social situation, etc. There's a whole debate there to be had. Much more research needs to be done in this area. Again, taking intuition and analysis and putting it into something useful that managers can use. I've got this traffic light model. So what do you do when analysis says no and your intuition says no? So they both say no. What do we do? That's a red light. It's a stop. It's a no-go. Just don't do it. Avoid the situation if your intuition says no and your analysis says no. Again, the opposite end of the spectrum. If your intuition says yes and your analysis says yes, that's a green light. That's approach. They're both no-brainers in the sense that one is it's a no-brainer to avoid, the other one it's a no-brainer to approach. The interesting place, of course, is in between, where intuition says no and analysis says yes. That's a yellow light on the traffic light, so that means check out your data. So your analytics all say yes, but your intuition is saying, hang on, there's something not quite right here, and that means check out your data a bit more, dig and delve into the data to find out exactly what is going on. What else have we got here then? Of course, where intuition says yes and analysis says no. So your gut feeling is saying yes, go for it, buy that car, buy that flat, take that job, but the analysis is saying no. What do we do there? Of course, we stress test our intuitions. We put our intuitions to the test to make sure that they hold water. So that's a quite useful little model, the traffic light model, for how to balance intuition and analysis. Because, of course, most decisions involve some combination of intuition and analysis. And most jobs involve both intuitive thinking and analytical thinking. So it's important to master both ways of thinking about things. Takeaway from workout 2 is that the human mind is a dual system. Effective managers do not have the luxury of choosing between analytical and intuitive approaches. That's Herbert Simon back in 1987 said that. And if you want to read more about the relationship between intuition and analysis, you could look at Trust Your Gut. That's where that little questionnaire is, the inventory and the intuitionometer. And Herbert Simon, 1987, terrific paper where he talks about the role of intuition and emotion in the context of rationality, which of course is another word we might use for analysis. Workout number 3, go with your gut. Should you go with your gut? What do we do here? In this one, I get groups of students together and ask them to do the following. Can you please? So this workout is essentially about when should you trust your gut and when should you not trust it. So in some situations it works, in other situations it doesn't. So when should you trust it and when should you not trust it? So I asked the groups to do the following. Can you please think of a situation where you relied on your gut feeling to make an important decision? Why did you trust your intuition in that situation? And they discuss it as a group, and they feed back into the main group, and we collate the deliberations from the groups together. And then, of course, the converse of that is think of a situation where you didn't rely on your gut feeling to make an important decision. Why did you not trust your intuition in that situation? And again, they reflect on it as a group and feed back into the main group to come up with some more general conclusions. And then I say to them, okay, well, based on your shared experiences, when should managers go with their gut? And when should managers not go with their gut? So what do people tend to say about that? Well, situations where people trust their gut tend to be the following. So situations involving safety, for example, walking along a darkened street at night, situations involving health, situations involving family and friends, interpersonal situations, social judgments like the interview situation, and also big purchases like buying a house or buying a car. People tend to trust their gut in those situations. Where do people not tend to trust their gut? They don't tend to trust their gut in situations involving numbers. The map, what does the map mean? The map means they don't tend to trust their intuition when they're in unfamiliar territory. In other words, people tend to trust their gut more when they're in a familiar place. I don't mean literally a place, metaphorical place, in places where they have experience. And people tend not to trust their gut where it involves probability, facts and figures, analysis of risks, and so on and so forth. Those are the situations where people tell me they don't trust their gut. What can we take from that more generally? Well, in terms of knowing when and when not to trust your intuition, trust your gut in situations where in high experience situations, in situations where you have enough experience to go on to be able to recognize patterns and take decisions. In situations involving danger or threat, intuition can be an early warning system and an avoid signal. In situations involving personal relationships and social interactions, can be a situation where people tend to trust their gut. And in creative and artistic decisions, creative intuition is something that people are reported relying on. When should you not trust your gut? So don't trust your gut in low experience situations, in situations that you don't have enough expertise to be able to make an intuitive judgment. Don't trust your gut when you're in a highly emotional state, when you're angry or ecstatic, because there you've got what Daniel Goleman talks about as the amygdala hijack. And emotions are not the same things as intuitions. We could go into that in some depth. I've written about it extensively. Intuitions and emotions are not the same things, and emotions can hijack intuitions. Don't trust your gut in situations where you might be biased or prejudiced. So, for example, in an interview situation, and you form a negative opinion of a particular candidate, well, maybe it's not an intuition. Maybe it's because you have a bias towards that type of person or a prejudice towards that type of person. So that involves disentangling your intuition from biases, prejudices, also from wishful thinking on the positive side. So don't trust your gut in situations where you might be biased or prejudiced, or just, it's something that you really want to happen. And finally, on probability-based decisions. For probability-based decisions that involve facts and figures, probabilities, risk assessment, then that's something that analysis can deal with because it's a solving system. We don't need intuition to do that anyway. So connecting with the literature, the literature here is kind of in the popular literature, because if you look through the popular business literature, we find lots of examples of world famous business figures reporting that they rely on their intuition. For example, here's one: if you can make a decision with analysis, you should do so. But it turns out that in life, your most important decisions are always made with instinct, intuition, taste, and heart. Who said that? Someone else said, if I think something is going to catch on, I trust my own intuition. Again, who said that? And finally, I've trusted the still small voice of intuition my entire life, and the only time I've made mistakes is when I didn't listen. The first one is Jeff Bezos, the second one is Bill Gates, and the third one, of course, is Oprah Winfrey. So that's connecting with the kind of the popular management literature. If you want to, the takeaway for workout 3 is that use intuition under conditions of uncertainty, ambiguity, and/or time pressure. If you have the sufficient expertise and experience, and if you want to read more about when you should and shouldn't trust it, work by Chinla Akinji and myself in the European Journal of Work and Organisational Psychology on intuition in police work talks about when you should and shouldn't trust your gut. And Chet Miller and Dwayne Ireland in that piece in Academy of Management Perspectives back in 2005 talked about intuition as a valuable decision-making tool in exploration, but not in exploitation. Okay, so that takes us on to workout 4. Remember, 5 workouts to build intuitive muscle power. Fourth one, de-bias your decisions. We know that intuition can sometimes get it wrong, and research into this has gone back a long, long way in organisational psychology and organisational behaviour. One of the most famous questions in this area of research is this one: a bat and ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does each item cost? So I use this with students quite regularly, and they like it, and they usually get it wrong. If I were there with you, I might ask you the question, how much does each item cost? The majority of students get this answer wrong, and they get it wrong because they rely on their intuition. Most people say the ball costs 10 cents and the bat costs $1. And of course that's wrong, because the difference isn't $1 then, is it? So the correct answer is 5 cents and $1 5 cents. But people tend to trust their intuition. I use that as an example of how your intuition can get it wrong. Another example of how your intuition can get it wrong is the most famous problem in the whole of psychology. It's called the Linda problem, and it was developed by Kahneman and Tversky. And the Linda problem goes as follows. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken and very bright. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. And the question is, which is more likely? Linda is a bank teller, or Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement? Which one is more likely? The majority of students get this answer wrong because they choose answer 2 because their decision making is hijacked by a stereotype that's conjured up by the description of Linda. But actually, if you think about it logically and analytically, if you solve this problem, it's got to be more likely that Linda is a bank teller because there are more bank tellers than feminist bank tellers. Feminist bank tellers are a subset of bank tellers. So by definition, in terms of frequencies, in terms of the pure numbers, there must be less of them. So 1 is more likely than 2. No matter how many times you explain that to students, you still get some in the room who object. Even though they understand the maths, they still object and say that it's more likely that Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. And I use it to illustrate the power of the intuitive mind, because the intuition is drawn magnetically to option 2. Option 2 is incorrect. It's a great example, again, innovated by Kahneman and Tversky, of how intuition can get it wrong. So we need to be aware of these biases, these heuristics, these mental shortcuts, in order to overcome them. Connecting this with the research, what we often do, for example, in an interview situation or when an entrepreneur is pitching for investment, we tend to answer the easy to answer question. For example, how impressed were you with the candidate's presentation in the interview? How impressed were you with the entrepreneur's pitch? In terms of, did you like them? Did they have an impressive PowerPoint presentation? Did they have a good stage presence? That's really not the question that needs to be answered. The question that needs to be answered is a harder to answer question. So, for example, in the base of entrepreneurs, what's the base rate of failure in this business, and what's the likelihood of success of this pitch? Or in the case of the employee selection decision, not do I like the candidate? Am I intuitively drawn to them? But what does their CV say? What do the references say? What do their psychometric test scores say? How did they perform at interview? It's a whole balance of data rather than being a single intuitive response. And what we tend to do is we use our intuition to answer an easy to answer question rather than answer a harder to answer question. That can be explained in terms of some underlying cognitive mechanisms, for example, the cognitive miser principle. So if we can use this less cognitive effort, we will do, because in a sense we're cognitively lazy by nature. That's reasonably well established in the literature, this idea of we're cognitive misers. Attribute substitution, what do I mean by that? That means answering an easy to answer question rather than a harder to answer question. And it ties in with the cognitive miser thing. We'd rather answer the easier to answer question because it's easier to answer. And as we know, intuition is a low effort system. So intuition is one way to answer easy to answer questions, but we need to be beware of it. The Linda problem was about relying on stereotypes. The question conjured up a stereotype, and then that stereotype influenced our decision. But we need to avoid that. We need to avoid relying on stereotypes because, as we know, they can lead to bias, prejudice, discrimination. And the whole area, of course, here is the heuristics and biases field of research innovated by Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky many decades ago in the 1980s. Takeaway for workout. Remember, each workout has a takeaway. So I give students a takeaway at the end of each of these. The takeaway from workout 4 is we need to be beware of biases, stereotypes, and answering easy to answer questions. And we should not confuse intuition with stereotyping, prejudice and discrimination, and wishful thinking. We need to avoid mixing up intuition with those 3 things there, because if we do mix them up, that can lead us into all sorts of difficulties. So that's workout 4 takeaway. If you want to read more about the research behind this. Highly recommend, of course, Daniel Kahneman's best-selling book, Thinking Fast and Slow, from 2011. And then Gerd Gigerenzer has recently published a book with Cambridge University Press called The Intelligence of Intuition. And they both talk about the upside and the downside of intuition and striking that balance between intuition's strengths and its weaknesses. That's workout 4. Workout 5, adding value with intuition in the age of artificial intelligence. This workout is all about what aspects of a person's job role can intuition add value to. In other words, what aspects of somebody's job role is intuition not likely to be replaced by? So the way that I do this with groups, and this is quite a long exercise, it can easily take an hour. So I'll take you through this fairly quickly. The workout 5 then, adding value with intuition. I get groups together who do roughly similar jobs. So for example, I'll give you the example in a minute. And then what I ask the groups to do is to list the 3 most important aspects of their job. And the word has to end with ing. I'll tell you why it has to end with ing in a minute. So for example, if it was a lecturer, then three most important aspects of my job might be tutoring students, marking their work, lecturing. And if you do this with a group, then you brainstorm a whole list of aspects of particular jobs. Then the task is to consolidate the responses into a comprehensive list. So come up with a comprehensive list of the aspects of the job, and then evaluate each of those aspects in terms of these 4 criteria. The amount of uncertainty involved in the task, the amount of empathy involved in the task, the amount of creativity involved in the task, and whether the task involves ethical judgment. And of course, where this is going is those tasks that involve high levels of uncertainty, those tasks that involve high levels of empathy, those tasks that involve high levels of creativity, and those tasks that involve high levels of ethical and moral judgment are tasks that can only be carried out using human intuition. In other words, they're parts of the job that are unlikely to be replaced by a machine. So this takes us to this idea of identifying and developing the capabilities where intuition adds most value. So as part of someone's job role, identify the things that can't be replaced by a machine and develop them. Identify the parts of the job that rely on intuition and develop them. That secures the human being's unique contribution, and it makes the job more secure. They can't be replaced by a machine. Of course, you can do the converse. You can flip it over and talk about, well, which aspects of the job, what are the aspects of the job that AI could add value to? So you can then evaluate a task. Evaluate if the task can be accomplished by AI. Is it repetitive? Does it involve repetitive actions that can be automated? Is it data intensive? Does it involve pattern recognition? Does it require speed and efficiency? To be done 24/7, where fatigue is, could be an issue if a human was doing it. And does it require consistency and accuracy? And again, human fatigue can creep in here and produce all sorts of errors. So those tasks that are repetitive, that are data intensive, that involve pattern recognition, that involve speed and efficiency, and that involve consistency and accuracy, those are the aspects of the job that are likely to be replaceable by artificial intelligence. Sorry, 6th one, scalability. Does the task need to scale up efficiently without proportional increases in human resources? So if a task checks those 6 boxes, then maybe it's a task that can be accomplished with AI. Similarly, on the previous slide, those tasks that involved uncertainty, empathy, creativity, moral judgment. If a task checks all those boxes, then perhaps it cannot be replaced by a machine. So aspects of a manager's job that require intuition, I would say, include these kind of things: reading team dynamics, evaluating an employee's potential, understanding employee motivation from their perspective. A machine can't do that because it can't get into their shoes, so to speak. Hiring for cultural fit. Human beings are good at making that judgment. Building team cohesion through interpersonal relations in the team. On-the-spot problem solving, where there isn't time to mobilize artificial intelligence to solve the problem. Setting priorities against tight deadlines. So those are some aspects of a manager's job, I think, where intuition adds value. Why is it a tightrope? Because it is. It's about using your intuition to balance the tightrope that a lot of managerial work involves. Final one. Yeah, of course, coming up with out-of-the-box solutions, the creative aspect of it as well. So those are some aspects of a manager's job role that require intuition. Taking ethical decisions. Again, sorry, I didn't realise there was such an extensive list there. So the next one, of course, then, what aspects of a manager's job can be accomplished using AI, tracking and reporting KPIs, analysing performance data, screening job candidates, analysing employee engagement data, automating routine tasks, optimising workflow and task allocation, managing information and knowledge. So those are the kinds of tasks that can be performed by AI. The tasks on the previous slide were the tasks that can be performed by a human being, or better performed by a human being. And this idea of hybrid intelligence is about using both artificial intelligence and human intelligence for the things that they are both good at, to get the best of both worlds. Forecasting. So workout 5 takeaway from workout 5 is tasks requiring human intuitive intelligence are uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and rely on experience, tacit knowledge, empathy, creativity, and moral judgment. Tasks requiring machine artificial intelligence are repetitive and data intensive, involve pattern recognition, speed, efficiency, consistency, accuracy, and scalability. And the manager's job role is likely to involve a myriad of different tasks, all of which can be executed effectively using analytical intelligence, intuitive intelligence, and artificial intelligence. So many jobs require both types of intelligences. So in other words, the future is hybrid, which takes us back to this idea of hybrid intelligence. Further reading, so here's the hybrid intelligence model again: human analytical intelligence, human intuitive intelligence, and machine artificial intelligence. I should say that I've not really said much at all about human analytical intelligence. That's because, well, one reason is that this talk is about intuitive intelligence, not about analytical intelligence, but also, as I said at the outset, the education and training system has done a very good job over the years of educating analytical intelligence. We know a lot about analytical intelligence. But the fact that I've not spoken about it doesn't diminish its importance. It is as important as the other types of intelligence. It's just that I didn't choose to discuss it in depth here. If you want to read more about that, you could go to a paper that was presented by Cheda Padas-Turan and myself at the Academy of Management in Boston in 2023. Dual process model of hybrid intelligence for improved decision making. If you can't get hold of it, then you drop me an email. I'd be happy to send you a copy. So where does that take us? Takeaway from the whole of the session, 5 takeaways. Get in touch with your gut feelings is the first takeaway. Intuition is a quick automatic judgment based on conscious processing of information. This is the takeaway from workout 1. The takeaway from workout 2. Workout 2, remember, is in 2 minds. The human mind is a dual system, etc., etc. Workout 3, go with your gut. When should you and when should you not go with your gut? Use intuition under conditions of uncertainty, ambiguity, and time pressure if you've got the requisite experience and expertise. Takeaway 4 from workout 4, debias your decisions, beware of biases, stereotypes, etc. Workout 5, adding value with intuition. In other words, what aspects of the manager's job role does intuition add value to, and therefore is not likely to be replaced by a machine? Intuition adds value in tasks that are uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and rely on experience, tacit knowledge, empathy, creativity, and moral judgment. And then we might ask ourselves the challenging question: is the future of work for humans intuitive? In other words, going forward, are jobs likely to involve more intuition than they have in the past, because intuition is something that can't be replaced by a machine? Therefore, if that were to be the case, that would of course increase the significance and importance of developing managers' intuitive intelligence. So if the future is intuitive, then the future of managerial education and training might also be intuitive and might also involve intuitive intelligence. Just to put the full slide on there, the new book that I've just published with Pearson called Trust Your Gut is all about intuitive intelligence actually, and it takes readers on a 7-step journey towards building intuitive intelligence. So step 1 shows readers how to build their intuitive muscle power. Step 2 shows readers how to get in touch with their gut feelings, etc., etc. Step 7, chapter 7, shows readers how to hone their hunches over the longer term to build intuitive intelligence. And each of the chapters in the book has a series of workouts, similar to some of the workouts I've shared with you today, for how to develop intuitive intelligence in terms of those 7 steps. So further reading, if you want to read more about intuition, not just my book out there, that's just been published, but also a book I published last year with Oxford University Press called Intuition in Business. That's kind of a heavyweight, state-of-the-art survey of intuition in business. Danny Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. Gary Klein's Intuition at Work also is excellent, as is Gerd Gigerenz's The Intelligence of Intuition. Okay, there we have it.
So that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed the talk. If you'd like to reach out, then please don't hesitate to email at e.sadler-smith@surrey.ac.uk or contact me on LinkedIn to connect. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.